Alright, so how's it going, guys? So we're taking a look at this armbar, right back into it, Xande and Dean. Um, Absolutely tense moment here from Metamoris. I remember watching it live, and it was chaotic in the room that I was in. Everyone was freaked out, thinking Dean might tap for the first time, and here it is. We see Dean's arm extended right here, looking for the tap, because he knows Dean, at this moment, does not believe he's going to escape from this armbar. The only reason that Dean decides to keep going is because there was not brake pressure on the arm. It's not because he didn't think that this was a legit attack, right? Or he believed that there was an escape route. At this moment in time, with his hand outstretched to tap, Dean does not believe that he's going to make it out of this, right? The only reason why he does is because as Xande starts to apply the armbar, Dean realizes that it isn't going to break his arm, so he might as well give it one shot to rotate out. And the reason why this is not going to break the arm is a couple of reasons, right? So first, the hip height of Xande is very low, right? We see that the hips are still on the floor here. He's pulling down with the arm, which is great, but the hip height is not off the floor, right? He's not really bridging. So you can see here that the feet are crossed. Now, when I was a beginner in jiu-jitsu, I was taught that crossing your feet for the armbar was the wrong thing to do. Now, it's obviously not the wrong thing to do, and there's lots of ways that you can do it, crossing your feet being one of them. But the reasoning behind why you are not supposed to cross your feet in this beginning jiu-jitsu classes that I had was because you wouldn't be able to bridge very much. Now, of course, you can still cross your feet and bridge simultaneously. It's just a little bit more difficult to do so. It requires a little bit more finesse and skill, and also requires a really important emphasis on hamstring contraction, right? So if there's extension in the hamstrings here, and the feet are crossed, there's a very shallow bridge length here. You can see that there's like a very subtle curve in the legs, and that's not going to allow for a lot of hip height, because ultimately your hips can only get as high as the full as where the knees are, right? So the hips aren't going to come up way up here and have the knees down here, right? So the hips are only going to really get up to this length right here. So this is kind of the maximum height right there of where Xande's hips could go with his knees here. Now, if he takes his knees and he sucks them in towards his where his hips are, and he pulls his heels in, then his hips can go higher, right? Maybe not quite as high as I've drawn it here, but you kind of get the point, right? The closer the heels are to the butt, the larger the bridge, right? It's kind of a 101 thing about jiu-jitsu. Especially in the beginning, you're talking about bridge height from bottom mount, right? So in this situation, because of the shallowness of Xande's legs, his hip height's not going to be very good. Now, second thing to note is that Xande's arm placement, right? His arm is kind of right through the center of Xande's body. This is a very traditional way of doing an armbar. Only problem with this is that the chest gets in the way, right? So when he pulls the arm down, he only has a certain amount of space before it hits his chest, and it can't go any farther, right? So given that the hip height is low, and given that this space right here is small, there isn't a lot of torque going on the arm. If you were to elevate this platform right here and make the hips up here, now this height will increase, right? So he's going to have more space to break the arm. This is why a traditional arm bar works, right? However, the problem is that if you can't get hip height, then you're not going to be able to increase this area. So there's another method to doing this, right? You can turn onto your right hip, and you can kind of have the arm drift this way until the arm is actually extended over here, right? And when the arm's extended over here, then you have a situation in which the pull down of the arm is to the floor and not to your chest anymore, right? Because it's off your chest. And you're breaking it over your thigh, which is also nice if there is a conflict of interest when you're applying this armbar, right? So what really should happen here is Dean should kind of shift over to his right hip. Xande should shift over to his right hip, pull the arm down to have more space, or elevate his hips more, and by tucking in his feet, right? So either one of those ways are ways that he could have finished the armbar. But as we see here, Dean starts pushing it off his face. Beautiful escape, just grinding it out, and then Xande decides to bail on it because it's not there, and he just whips his way out, just using a traditional armbar escape of throwing the legs over the head. So very interesting situation, beautiful armbar, beautiful escape.